My name is Laura Reines, and I live in Mankato right now. But something unique to my story is that I was adopted at the age of 11 months. I know that I was born in Kentucky, and I was in two foster homes before I came to join my family in southern Minnesota. I guess growing up, there were a lot of times where there were issues. I had lots of self esteem issues, mainly because I didn't have anyone to model myself after. And I should mention it was a transracial adoption too. So there were no African American people in my family. I did have two brothers and a sister that are Korean, but they kind of all had each other. And where the rubber meets the road, I had me. I remember being on the playground. The playground scene is about to unfold here, but I remember being on the playground and being called the N-word for the first time. And I didn't really know what it meant. I just knew that by the way that it was said, it probably wasn't a good thing. I went home and asked my mom, I heard this word, what does it mean? And her first thing was, oh, that's a bad word. So I thought, did someone swear at me, or, what's bad? And then she just told me kind of what it meant. But before that, I really didn't know, because my parents just raised us all like we're all unique, we're all individual, we're a family, no one's better than anyone else. So kind of a little utopia. So when I stepped out into the world, that's when I realized, okay, things might not be as they were at home. So I think those are some of my first experiences. I would also say another experience to highlight was being in theater. I was a big theater buff and all the way through school, but it was kind of typecasting that was going on. And I remember we were doing The Sound of Music, and I really wanted to play one of the Von Trapp family singers, like the children. And basically it was like, well, no one's going to believe that you're a member of the Von Trapp family. So then again, I was like, well, what is this? It's happening far too often. I don't like it. Otherwise, I would say getting to college was really tough, partially on me because I chose to go to college in South Dakota. But I think I was on the sunny side of life, thinking, well, it's a new start. It'll be different there. There'll be so many different types of people. And no, that wasn't the case. I think I've never felt more out of place, actually, as when I was in college. The first thing that happened was my roommate told me the very first night that she doesn't like Black people. She doesn't trust them, and therefore she will be requesting a room change. And that was like my first night of college, my first time really being away from the shelter of home where everybody knew me, everybody knew it was a small town. But then to be there away from home really for the first time and then hear that, I wanted to go home. I really did. College was the first time when I heard a lot of racial jokes. And I didn't realize that there were that many jokes about Black people, but apparently there are. They were told in my presence. I never knew how to react. Now I would say something, but coming from where I was at the time, no way, no way. So that was a really hard time. Never had any boyfriends, never experienced some of those rites of passage, that people go through in college. Went to one party my whole college experience because I walked in and they were just saying some stuff when I walked in, and I don't even remember exactly what it was, but that is the story of the one party I attended in college. Didn't feel safe. I would say from there, I think we are kind of a collection of our experiences and all the things that we take with us from different experiences that we've had growing up. And as I look into my adult years, I thought, you know what? No one's going to want to marry me. No one's going to, because I've been told all this stuff all the way along that this is what beauty is and you don't fit. So you're not beautiful. You don't look like people that are beautiful. And so I just kind of took that with me through my life, thinking, well, I'm going to be single and I'll adopt a child, when I'm 25, 26, if nothing has happened. And I found someone. I got married. But the thing that was difficult with that is he had never dated a person of color, and I had never seriously dated anyone at all. So I think I got really trapped in the just be lucky you have someone, be lucky that somebody wanted you. And we got married, and the best thing to come out of that was my son, Mason. And absolutely, I mean, if I had to go through everything I went through to still have Mason, I absolutely would do it again. And then later on in my life, I think I've really come into my Blackness, partially because of my kids. I wanted them to feel like I could be a good role model. And I never wanted them to go through the stuff that I went through, and certainly not to the depth, that I went through it. When Mason was born, when my son was born, I looked at him, I remember in the hospital, and I unwrapped him, how you count fingers and toes and all that stuff. And then it just hit me like, this is the first biological relative that I know ever. And I'm 24. So that was kind of a really big experience for me. Gave me purpose, made me feel like I am needed in some capacity, because I think growing up, I always kind of felt like I was disposable somehow. But this was the first time I really felt centered and like, yeah, and I have work to do. I have work to do in this world because I wanted more for my kids. I did not want them to go through half of what I went through. And some of the things that I'm talking about as of late, especially with the current climate and everything that's going on, some of the things I'm talking about, I've never mentioned to anyone. I guess I never felt safe, and it's important to know like who your allies are, who's got your back. And I think I feel lucky to have Mason, because I've always known that he has my back, and there's nothing that I would go through that I couldn't talk to him about. I've experienced actually both racism and microaggressions, and we want to tell ourselves, we're here in Minnesota, that doesn't happen, you should be fairly insulated. But no, I think probably the greatest microaggression that I have experienced is my hair. People touching my hair without asking, just reaching up and getting in there and feeling my hair. And then when I would get assertive and I'd say, please don't do that, why? Why not? And they would just not see anything. And I remember the same thing happening to my kids. And I would instruct them, well, you just reach back out and touch their hair. And, so that's probably one of the most common things I think that people don't necessarily think about is, well, this is on my person and I'm not an anomaly. I'm not an animal. This is not a petting zoo. So that's probably the one that I've heard most. Another one is, well, you don't look like, or you don't sound Black. I think that would be a big one. You're so well spoken for a Black person. I mean, you had me going until you added that part at the end, for a Black person. So I never knew, is that a compliment? I think it's kind of a backhanded compliment at best. But I would hear that, you're so smart for a Black person. You're actually kind of pretty, I guess. Those kinds of things are major. Your name sounds so white, because Laura, and my maiden name is German. So your name sounds so white. I bet you got into this school. I bet you got this job because you're Black. You probably took away a job from some other hardworking, white person. I can't believe you have that degree. So there's all kinds of things. And I think with a microaggression, people might not think that they're aggressing on you. Maybe they truly don't know, but it puts a lot of pressure on me to then try to educate people and say, hey, this is hurtful, and here's why. So those are just some. I could probably talk for days, but those are just some of the most common. I think one of the things that we hear most about, or one of the terms that's used a lot, is microaggression. And I'm not sure that people understand what it is. I know that I didn't for a long time. So I guess to me, a microaggression is, you can think of it almost as a backhanded compliment, or saying something but not really saying it. So if someone says, you're so beautiful for a Black woman, that's considered a microaggression, because it's saying that most Black people are not beautiful, but lucky for you, you are. So they're kind of, I look at them as kind of flying under the radar, those microaggressions. Then there's the overt, racial aggressions. And I think that's something that more people are familiar with. That would be like using the N-word, or laughing at things like blackface, theater, or graffiti, spraying graffiti on someone's house or wall. And I guess maybe I'm a little bit alone here, but I look at the Confederate flag as like a major microaggression, not just micro. Um, just because of what it stands for. And we've had an incident here where our neighbors had a Confederate flag, and they had posted it in the window that directly faces our dining room table. So every time we were sitting at the table, we were looking out our window at that. So I think the micro, think of that as things that are just under the radar, things that you may be saying, well, is that something racist or isn't it? I can't tell if it's a compliment or, and then of course the outward slashing tires. If you think of burning a cross, the KKK, that is kind of the in-your-face racism. When I see the Confederate flag, to me, it's kind of a put me in my place kind of representation. And if you think about it, like the cross represents religion. But when I see the flag, what it reminds me of is all the hostility that was happening at that time, and being a part of it or standing together with what was going on. It's almost kind of like a victory cry or a battle cry, but to me it says it's racial to me because of what it represents. A family member is really good with decorating. So if it's Halloween, there's pumpkins all over. If it's Christmas, then it's Santa Claus. And it just so happened that I went to the family member's house one year, and there were these cute little pumpkin decorations on the table. They were little ceramic pumpkins. And there was like a mom, a dad, and then the kids. And I just thought, that is so cute. I love that. Well, then if we fast forward a year, I was back around Halloween time, and it was like, look what we got for you. And I went in and I looked, and there was the mom pumpkin, the dad, the little baby pumpkins, and then this bigger than life pumpkin that was painted Crayola black. And of course the white teeth and all of that. And I guess what was said is like, aren't you glad we're including you? And I can hardly talk about it today. And it was a family member. And so I think that adds twice the hurt to it. And then expecting that I'm supposed to be glad or feel good about it. And I remember it like classically, like I just wanted to go home. I'm like, I don't belong here. I guess I never did. And that was hard. It was really, really hard. And probably the most overt because it was from family. I think that's why that hurt the most. I would say I'm really, really close with my mom and have always been. And so I know that when things happened, when I was really little, I would tell her, Mom, here's what happened. That's how I learned what the N-word was, because I asked her and she told me. But as I grew up, I felt less and less comfortable talking to my parents about it because in the back of my mind, I didn't want them to feel guilty for having adopted me and brought me here to Minnesota. So I kind of just internalized all of it. And probably it wasn't until my adulthood now where I really felt comfortable telling people about my experience and telling people what happened. The first few times I spoke about it on Facebook, some people messaged me like, what? I never knew. And these are people that I grew up with, but I didn't feel safe. So who did I talk to? Just my mom originally. In terms of, I think, what white people can do to help, it's kind of a tough one because part of me is like, ask questions. If there's something you don't know, ask questions. But then the flip side of that is I can't be your only teacher. That's a lot of weight to carry. So I think it's doing stuff to educate themselves. The books that they read, maybe they're watching BET for the first time, or go see a movie with a predominantly black cast. Those kinds of things. Expose yourself, when you get the chance. In terms of being an ally, I guess, for myself personally, I'm looking at somebody that'll do more than post something on Facebook or do more than just say, how you doing? My tribe of people are the people that'll stand there with me, in the trenches or when things get tough. I guess for me, that's mostly what I need because I don't feel that I really had that growing up. In terms of allies, I would say my family primarily and my children, really. Because I think growing up here, we've all shared very similar experiences, and how far they would go. I mean, I know that they would jump in front of somebody, if someone was trying to hurt me. I mean, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that would happen, and I would do the same for them. So it's probably my greatest allies. Other than that, I would think friends of my kids, because they're too, the more we get to know each other, the more that I know that the advocacy is not just lip service. I think a lot of people have asked me, what can I do to help you out besides posting on Facebook, a one time thing? And I think the biggest thing for me personally is just show up. With everything that's been going on lately, I will never forget the people that called me and said, hey, how you doing? Acknowledging that this stuff is going on and acknowledging that I might be feeling a certain way about everything that's going on. I think that's important to me. The other thing I would really say is to put yourself in uncomfortable places. Examine some of your own fears, examine some of your own prejudices. And you know what? Go to downtown Minneapolis and hang out. Go to a Black church. Go on vacation and stay in places that are predominantly people of color. Because then I think if nothing else, it gets you just a sliver of what I go through, every single day. I think checking in, like I said, though, is oh so important.